Welcome to Yehoshua's Gematria-Time Daf Yomi Shiur, where in the end time, any time is a great time to learn the Daf Yomi in Gematria-Time. And I think I got that. I think I'm getting into the hang of this new tagline. This is a new spin on the Gematria, the Gematriatic Daf. The Daf Yomi. A new spin on the Daf Yomi as a Gematria-Time Daf Yomi. And what I've been doing is finding two very famous expressions, words or phrases in the Talmud that appear on every Daf and in every Amud, and translating them into Gematria, meaning a numerical value, and seeing if over time there are some patterns, or it might be an effective way to create a new memory technique, or just to discover something new. So today, for Daf 100, we're in Chullin 100. Now this is the Daf of yesterday. This is not today's Daf. Yesterday was Shabbat. It was Saturday, August 8th, 2026, and it was Shabbat, the 25th day of Av, 5786, Parsha Re'eh, and Chullin 100 was yesterday's Daf. I'm doing it many times these days because Shabbos ends late, and I have to catch up on other stuff at night, so it leaves little time to do the Daf. Maybe in the days when the winter, when the nights are longer, I can do that day's Daf and Saturday night, but so today on Chullin 100, we encounter a word, 100a, Hanicha Leman de Amar. Anyone who's familiar with the Talmud will instantly recognize this expression, this group of three words, Hanicha Leman de Amar, which means it's good according to the one who says that. When the Gemara, the Talmud, presents a machlokes, meaning a disagreement, then oftentimes the Gemara will analyze both sides of both opinions, and then they'll put it to the test, and they'll say, it's good according to the one who says this thing, but according to the other one, what do you do with this? That's a very common thing. Hanich Lamad Amar equals 440. Just to set the record straight, I'm only using regular Gematria, the standard universal Hebrew Gematria cipher, because there aren't many different ciphers. There's Mispar Katan, Mispar Seder, Atbash, this, that, the other. I do use those, but I do those when I'm analyzing Tanakh, but not for Gemara. For Gemara, it's just got to be very standard because there's just not enough time to do all the ciphers. So, okay, Hanich Laman da Amar equals 440, and then we also encounter another word on this Amud, and if I remember, Bli Neder, God willing, when we get to those things, I'll announce these were the words of the thing. Okay, Utsricha, and it was necessary. So equals 327, which equals yeshiva. Just off the top of my head, I knew that 327 equals yeshiva. It also equals ha'orev, right? Yeah, because reish ayin is 270 and ha'orev or ha'erev, the evening, is also 327. So if you learn yeshiva in the evening, you might think about the number 327. Utsricha, and was necessary, also equals 327. So you can see it's building like a memory technique. So Utsricha, that's for side A, and since this is a short daf, I'll be going through the whole side A and side B as one video, and I'll announce the other ones when we get there. Okay, let's get started. The first two words of Ber Yashani, that's the top of the Amud. The Gemara answers that the sciatic nerve is a distinct entity, and therefore it is different. It is different in that it is not subject to nullification. The Mishnah states, and similarly in the case of a piece of animal carcass, or a piece of non-kosher fish that was cooked with similar pieces of kosher meat or fish, when one identifies the forbidden piece and removes it, the rest of the meat or fish is forbidden only if the forbidden piece was large enough to impart flavor to the entire mixture, and if he does not identify and remove the forbidden piece, all the pieces are forbidden due to the possibility that each piece one selects might be the forbidden piece. The Gemara challenges, even if the piece of the animal carcass was not removed, let it be nullified by a simple majority, as the majority of the pieces are kosher. Excuse me for a moment. I'll turn the light. I hope this helps. I realized the light was off. Okay. Here we have that word again that I mentioned. The Gemara clarifies this challenge. This ruling works out good, according to the one who said that we learned any item whose manner is to be counted. Kol shadar kol limnos. That seems also like a claw, but anyway, well, I'll keep it to 2 words. Okay, anyway, let's go back. Hanich laman damar, which is equal to 440. Hanich laman damar kol shadar kol limnos shani no laman damar she damar es shadar kol limnos shani no my ikle meimau. Okay, kol shadar kol limnos shani no el mandar es shadar kol limanos shaninu my ikle meimar. Okay, let's see how they translate that. Shani chaticha hoyol ru'yel l'chabed ba lifnei ha'orchim. The Gemara challenges this ruling works out well according to the one who said that we learned any item whose manner is to be counted, meaning that is sometimes sold by unit rather than by weight or volume, is considered significant and therefore is not subject to nullification. But according to the one who said that we learned it is only an item whose manner is exclusively to be counted, it is only an item. Okay, what's the difference of opinions here? This ruling works out well according to the one who said that we learned any item whose manner is to be counted, that is sometimes sold by unit rather than by weight or by volume, is considered significant and therefore is not subject to nullification. But according to the one who said that we learned it is only an item whose manner is exclusively to be counted. Okay, sometimes by unit or sometimes by weight, and then there's one who says that it's only sold by unit. That is considered significant and therefore not subject to nullification. What can be said? Since pieces of meat or fish are not always sold by unit, they should be subject to nullification. The Gemara answers a piece of meat or fish is different, since it is suitable to give honor with it by placing it before guests. Therefore, due to its significance, it is not subject to nullification. Utsricha. Here is the next word we had, utsricha, which is equal to 327, which is Gematria of Yeshiva, and Ha'erev, the evening, or Arva, or Arava. Utsricha. It was necessary. And it's his first phone number, first 3 digits, and it's his first 3 digits. Boom, boom. Utsricha diyash me'inan gid mishum diberia hi avar chaticha imelo. The Gemara adds, and it was necessary for the Mishnah to teach both the halacha that the sciatic nerve is not nullified, and the halacha that a piece of non-kosher meat or fish is not nullified, as if the Mishnah had taught us only the case of a sciatic nerve. One might think that it is not nullified because it is a distinct entity, but in the case of a piece of non-kosher meat, say it is not significant and it is subject to nullification. And if the Mishnah had taught us the halacha only in the case of a piece of non-kosher meat or fish, one might think that it is not nullified, since it is suitable to give honor with it by placing it before the guests. But in the case of a sciatic nerve, say it is not significant and it is subject to nullification. Therefore, it was necessary for the Mishnah to teach both cases. Darash Rabba Bar Bar Chana Chaticha Shel Neveilo V'Dag Tamei Enoch Oseres עד שתיתן טעם ברוטב וכיפה וחתיכות. Rabba Bar Bar Chana taught a piece of meat of an unslaughtered carcass or of a non-kosher species of fish that fell into a pot of kosher food does not render the contents of the pot forbidden unless it imparts flavor to the broth and to the deposits of food remaining in the pot and to the other pieces of food in the pot. Okay, Rava Mora Leudrash, Kevan Shinosantam Chaticha, Chaticha Atzmona says Nevelo, Toiseres Kol Hachatichos Chullin, Mipnei Shehein Mino. Rav disagreed with Rabba Bar Bar Chana and appointed a disseminator to stand before him and teach his statement to a wider audience. And he taught once the non-kosher meat or fish has imparted flavor to another piece in the pot. The second piece itself becomes non-kosher, and this second piece renders all the pieces of meat, fish, or fish in the pot forbidden because they are of the same type. Therefore, nullification does not apply. Omer le Rav Safra le Abaye Mechdi Rav Kiman Amru Lishmaite Rabbi Yehuda de Amar Min B'Mino Labatil. We had this recently, Min B'Mino Labatil. Do we remember what it was? It's 290, right? De Amar Min B'Mino Labatil My Iria Ki Tam. See, My Ear is another really famous one, but I guess we'll see it a lot. So anyway, Kinosin Tam Afilu Lo Nasan Tam Nami. Amar le Hachab Mayaskinan. Do you remember that? We had that too. Hachab Mayaskinan equals 419. Ani Mashiach. Hachab Mayaskinan Bishe Kadam Besilko. Rav Safra said to Abaye, now in accordance with whose opinion did Rav say his statement? It is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that a type of food mixed with food of its own type is not nullified. But if so, why does Rav say specifically that the non-kosher meat renders all the pieces forbidden only when it is imparted flavor by another piece? Even if it did not impart flavor to another piece, it should render all the contents of the pot forbidden. Abaye said to him, Here we are dealing with a case where he cooked the non-kosher piece with one kosher piece and removed the non-kosher piece before adding the other pieces. Consequently, the remaining pieces are forbidden only when the non-kosher piece imparted flavor to the piece it was cooked with. Rava says, and now we turn to 100b. Afilu tema lo kadam v'silko havemin umino v'davar acher. You may even say that it is referring to a case where he did not first remove the piece of non-kosher meat or fish. Nevertheless, this is a case of a mixture of one type of food with its own type of food and with something else, meaning the spices and broth in the pot. And now we come to our Gematriatic computations for this Amud. On Chullin 100b, the words are, the first term is Afilu Tema. We just had it. The first two words at the top of the page, Afilu Tema. Even if you will say, or you may even say that, Afilu Tema equals 578. Afilu Tema equals 578. That's great. And the next one is a super famous word, Talmud Lomar. The Torah teaches. The Talmud it teaches. Therefore, the pasuk says Talmud Lomar, and Talmud Lomar equals 756, which is Gematria Zerach Yisrael. Yisrael is 541. Zerach is 215. 541 and 215. Yeah. It's 756, Ganze. Yep. Afilu Tema. No, Talmud Lomar and Afilu Tema. 578 and 756. Let's go. Let's reiterate the first line of the Amud. 100b. Afilu Tema lo karam v'silko havemin umino b'davar acher. You may even say that is referring to a case where you did not first remove the piece of non-kosher meat or fish. Nevertheless, this is a case of a mixture of one type of food with its own type of food and with something else, meaning the spices and broth in the pot. V'chol min umino b'davar acher sak es mino kemi she'eno v'she'ein mino rabba alav umivatlo. In any case of a type of forbidden food mixed with its own type of food and with something else, disregard the food that its own type, as though it is not present in the mixture. And if the amount of permitted food that is not its own type is 60 times greater than the forbidden food, the permitted food nullifies it. Rav's ruling applies to a case where the forbidden piece of meat or fish imparts flavor to another piece before the spices and broth are added, and there is a total volume of 60 times greater than the original non-kosher piece. Consequently, even if the amount of spices and broth is eventually 60 times greater than the original non-kosher piece of meat or fish, the entire mixture is forbidden, as the spices and broth are not 60 times greater than the two pieces of meat or fish, which are now kosher. New Mishnah. Noheg b'toira, tohoira. I just realized that tohoira sounds like toira. Toira is tohoira. It's very pure. Noheg b'toira, ve'eino noheg b'tmeo. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, af b'tmeo. Rabbi Yehuda, הלא מבני יעקב נסר גידנושה, ועדיין בהמה טמאה מותרת להן, אמרו לו, בסיני נאמר, אלא שנכתב במקומוי. The prohibition of eating the sciatic nerve applies to a kosher animal and does not apply to a non-kosher animal. Rabbi Yehuda says it applies even to a non-kosher animal. Rabbi Yehuda said an explanation was in the sciatic nerve forbidden for the children of Jacob, as it is written, therefore the children of Israel eat not the sciatic nerve, Genesis 32:33. Yet the meat of a non-kosher animal was still permitted to them. Since the sciatic nerve of non-kosher animals became forbidden at the time, it remains forbidden now. The rabbi said to Rabbi Yehuda, the prohibition was stated at Sinai, but it was written in its place in the battle of Jacob and the angel, despite the fact that the prohibition did not take effect then. That's the Mishnah. Now we proceed to the Talmud. Zokdei the Talmud. V'sava Rabbi Yehuda Yisu Chala Yisu. V'tanyo Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Yochol tehei nivlas oiv tomim mitamam bigodim bebeis hablio. The Gemara asks, and does Rabbi Yehuda hold that a prohibition takes effect where another prohibition already exists? All right, Ein Lav, Ein Chal Isser Chal Isser. That's another very, very famous thing that if there's one prohibition, it doesn't affect. There's no other another prohibition can't be attached upon one prohibition, which I don't really understand it, but why not? But anyway, that's the principle that they say. But isn't it taught in a Braita? Rabbi Yehuda says one might have thought that the carcass of a non-kosher bird renders the garments of one who swallows it ritually impure when it is in the throat, similar to the carcass of a kosher bird. Talmud Loma, that's our second word of the Amud. Talmud Lomar, remember that? Does anyone remember what it was? Very good, 756. Why? Zerach Yisroel! Not to be confused with Zerah Yisrael, Zerach. Zerach, like parrots and Zerach. Zerach Yisroel is Gematria-Time Loimel. Talmud Lomar nevelo trefa lo yachol tamibam. Mi sheisur b'shumban doichel nevelo. Yosef zeh b'shumban doichel nevelo b'shumban doichel tameo. Therefore, the verse states concerning the impurity of a carcass of birds or carcass, or that which is torn of animals, he shall not eat to defile himself with it. Leviticus 22, verse 8. The verse indicates that only those birds that are forbidden specifically due to the prohibition of you shall not eat a carcass, meaning kosher birds that died without ritual slaughter, cause impurity in this manner. This serves to exclude any bird that is not forbidden due to the prohibition. You shall not eat of a carcass, but rather due to the prohibition, you shall not eat a non-kosher bird. This indicates that according to Rabbi Yehuda, the prohibition of eating a carcass does not take effect with regard to a non-kosher bird because it is already subject to a different prohibition. The Gemara continues with its question, and if you would say that Rabbi Yehuda holds that sciatic nerves do not impart flavor, meaning they do not have flavor and therefore are not classified as food, And even with regard to a non-kosher animal, it's prohibited to eat the sciatic nerve because the general prohibition of eating a sciatic nerve applies, whereas the prohibition of eating non-kosher animals does not apply because the sciatic nerve is not considered food. This is untenable. V'sava Rav Yehuda ein begid benoisin tam. V'yatanya oichel gid anoshish behem tamea Rav Yehuda mechayev shtayim v'shimon poitel. The Gemara explains, and does Rav Yehuda hold that sciatic nerves do not impart flavor? But isn't it taught in the Braita with regard to one who eats the sciatic nerve of a non-kosher animal? Rabbi Yehuda deems him liable to receive 2 sets of lashes, one for eating the sciatic nerve and one for eating the meat of a non-kosher animal. Rabbi Shimon exempts him entirely from lashes. This indicates that Rabbi Yehuda holds that the sciatic nerve does not have flavor. Lie. The oilam kasav yesh begidim noisin tam kasav noig b'shlil. The Isur Gid the Isur Tumo Mahadi Hadodi Kaosi. The Gemara answers actually Rabbi Yehuda holds that the sciatic nerves do impart flavor, and he also holds that the prohibition of eating the sciatic nerve applies to the sciatic nerve of an animal fetus. Consequently, although Rabbi Yehuda holds that the prohibition does not take effect where another already exists, one who eats the sciatic nerve of a non-kosher animal is flogged twice, because the prohibition of eating a sciatic nerve and the prohibition of eating meat from a non-kosher animal come into effect at the same time. U'mimotzis amrot noig b'shlil v'otnan noig b'shlil Rabbi Yehuda Omer Edo noig b'shlil v'chel v'muto. The Gemara challenges this answer, and you can say that Rabbi Yehuda holds that the prohibition of eating a sciatic nerve applies to the sciatic nerve. No, the Gemara challenges. And can you say that Rabbi Yehuda holds that the prohibition of eating a sciatic nerve applies to the sciatic nerve of a fetus? But didn't we learn in the Mishnah in 89b the prohibition applies to a late-term fetus in the womb? Rabbi Yehuda says it does not apply to a fetus, and similarly, the fat of a fetus is permitted. Hani mili gabe tahoira derech manoma kobe mitochelu aval betmei noeg. The Gemara answers this statement that the prohibition of eating the sciatic nerve does not apply to a fetus is with regard to a kosher species of animal, because the Merciful One stated in the Torah, and every animal that divides the hoof, splits the hoof, right, and has the hoof wholly cloven in two, and chews the cud among the animals, Ba behema, among the animals you may eat. Deuteronomy 14:6. We just had this yesterday reading. Parshas Re'eh. The term Ba behema may also be translated as inside the animals, indicating that anything inside a kosher animal, when it is slaughtered, is permitted for consumption, including all parts of a fetus. But with regard to a non-kosher species of animal, the prohibition applies. The tarvayu mahadiado dikasu v'tnan ad elu tumos anozir migaleach alameis v'al kezayis b'alameis. The Gemara challenges the assertion that the prohibitions of eating the sciatic nerve and of eating non-kosher meat take effect at the same time. And can you say that they both come into effect at the same time? But didn't we learn in the Mishnah, Nazir 49b, a Nazirite shaved for having become impure from these following sources of ritual impurity: for having become impure with impurity imparted by a corpse, and for impurity imparted by an olive bulb of a corpse. The Chullin al kezayis min ameis migaleach. Alameis kulo lo koshchein am Rabbi Yochanan lo nitzricha ela lenefel shelo nikshahu ve'ivara begirin alma isur tumakadim. And this poses a difficulty for us. If a Nazirite shaves for becoming impure from an olive bulb of a corpse, is it not obvious that all the more so he shall shave for becoming impure from an entire corpse? And Rabbi Yochanan said, it is necessary only with regard to a miscarried fetus, whose limbs have not yet become joined to its sinews, although the fetus does not yet contain the olive bulk of flesh, since it is a complete entity. it transmits impurity to anything under the same roof. Evidently, the limbs of the body are formed before the nerves and sinews, and therefore the prohibition of eating non-kosher meat takes effect prior to the prohibition of the sciatic nerve. Afal gav isur tumekadim ase isur gid chayil ale shekein isur noeg b'bnei Noach. The Gemara answers, even though the prohibition of eating non-kosher meat takes effect prior to the prohibition of eating the sciatic nerve, the prohibition of the sciatic nerve also comes and takes effect upon a non-kosher animal, because this prohibition applies to the descendants of Noah, meaning to Gentiles, since the prohibition of eating the sciatic nerve adds an additional stringency that did not exist with regard to non-kosher meat. It takes effect even though there was an already existing prohibition. Dekanami Diktani Amar Rav Yehuda Ve'alo mibnei Yaakov ne'esar gid hanoshe ve'adayin ba'behema tme'a muteres lohim. According to this answer, the language of the Mishnah is also precise, as it teaches. Rabbi Yehuda said, wasn't the sciatic nerve forbidden for the children of Jacob, as it is written, therefore the children of Israel eat not the sciatic nerve, Genesis 32:33. Yet the meat of a non-kosher animal was still permitted to them. This indicates that the basis of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is the fact that the sciatic nerve was forbidden to the children of Jacob, who had the status of the descendants of Noah. Gufa ha'oichel gidano sheshil behemat tmeah Rabbi Yehuda b'chayev shtayim. The Gemara returns to the matter itself, cited above, with regard to one who eats the sciatic nerve of a non-kosher animal. Rabbi Yehuda deems him liable to receive 2 sets of lashes, one for eating the sciatic nerve and one for eating the meat of a non-kosher animal. To be continued. This has been Daf 100 of Chullin.